Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Old Man and the Read. My name is Jerry. Today I'm going to try doing something a little different. I've been wanting to do something about all of the sci-fi books I've read and trying to come up with some way of presenting them because a lot of them I read so many years ago that I really don't remember what they're about. And I'm trying to avoid rereading books as much as I can, and I really don't want to reread them. So I thought what I was going to do was just show what I consider my 50 favorite sci-fi writers and just show the books that I've read. Some of them I've read quite a few books of, and I'll probably try doing individual videos of those writers, but right now I'm not really going to say much about them. And I think I have 50 books. They're the majority of the books I have are writers. I've only read a few books, a lot of them maybe just one or two books. And I've been adding and subtracting books as I've been trying to compile this. So I think I've got 50, but I'm not positive. Anyway, with that, I'll show you the books I have. And the first writer I'm going to show is Cixin Liu. He's a Chinese sci-fi writer, and I think, for my tastes, he writes the best science fiction I've ever read. So he wrote the trilogy, The Remembrance of Earth's Past, and this is the first book, the Three-Body Problem. The next is The Dark Forest. And the third in the trilogy is Death's End. Some of the other books I've read by him include The Wandering Earth, Ball Lightning, and Supernova Era. The next writer I'm going to show is Ian M. Banks. Most of his sci-fi were around the culture series, and that's about a futuristic urban society. And I really don't remember which of these were what. So anyway, I'm just going to show you the books. The first I have is The Hydrogen Sonata. The next is The Player of Games. Next is Matter. The next is Use of Weapons. Next is Against the Dark Background. After that, Consider Phlebas. And the last book I have by Ian Banks is The Algebrist. The next writer I'll show is Ursula Le Guin. She wrote both science fiction and speculative fiction, and I'm not sure what defines which, so I'll just show you what I've read by Le Guin. The first I have is The Left Hand of Darkness. Next is The Word for World is Forest. The next is Unlocking the Air and Other Stories. Next is The Beginning Place. Next is The Birthday of the World. Then The Dispossessed. City of Illusions. Always Coming Home. Orsinian Tales. The Wind's 12 Quarters. The Unreal and the Real. And that's everything I read by Le Guin. Next, I have a series of just writers that I've read a smaller amount from. The first is Isaac Asimov. This is The Gods Themselves. Nemesis. The End of Eternity. I, Robot. And the Foundation Trilogy. Next I have is Robert A. Heinlein. The first book is Stranger in a Strange Land. Double Star. Starship Troopers. And The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. Next is another favorite of mine, Joe Haldeman, and I've only got 3 of his. The Forever War, The Accidental Time Machine, and Old 20th. Next is a writer who is known mostly for her historical fiction, but the first 2 books she wrote were science fiction, and they're both just quite outstanding. That's Mary Doria Russell, and the first I have is The Sparrow, and then Children of God, but really exceptionally good books. The next writer is Philip K. Dick, and I'll show you what I have of his. The Man in the High Castle, Eye in the Sky, A Scanner Darkly, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And let's see, The Divine Invasion. And finally, Follow My Tears, the Policeman Said. Next writer is Richard K. Morgan. I've got a few of his. The first is Altered Carbon. I think this is his best book. Then Broken Angels. Woken Furies. 13. And Market Forces. The next writer is Doris Leing, a writer that's known for much other than science fiction, but she did write quite an exceptionally good series of books of science fiction. It's a 4-part series of the Campus in Argus Archives. So the first is Shikasta. Number 2 is The Marriage Between Zones 3, 4, and 5. The third is The Syrian Experiments. Then The Making of the Representative for Planet 8. And finally, The Sentimental Agents. Next is, he's not really science fiction by definition, but I don't know how else to classify him. But he wrote some really strange books. That's China Myville, and I'll show you what I read by him. The first is The City and the City. Perdido Street Station. Embassy Town. Kraken. Rail Sea. Iron Council. The Last Days of New Paris. And finally, 3 Moments of an Explosion. So I'm going to pause the video now and exchange books, so I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Now I'll continue. I have the next writer is Kurt Vonnegut. Most of what he wrote was science fiction. Some of it wasn't, but I'll just show you everything I've read by him because I don't recall what some of these books were about. So the first book is Time Quake. The next is Sirens of Titan. Slaughterhouse 5. Hocus Pocus. Slapstick. Cat's Cradle. A Man Without a Country, and I don't believe this was science fiction, but it was a good book. Galapagos. Bluebeard. And that's everything I've read by Kurt Vonnegut. The next is, I only have one book, but it's probably one of the most famous science fiction books of all time. Dune by Frank Herbert. And now I'll just go through, these are all just a few books by each of the writers. First one I have is Clifford D. Simic, and this is Time and Again. Cosmic Engineers. The Trouble with Tycho. Time is the Simplest Thing. And Way Station. The next writer is Frederick Pohl, and I read Gem. Gateway. The World at the End of Time. And I guess that's everything I've read by Frederick Pohl. The next writer is Robert Silverberg, and I'll show you his books. The Stochastic Man. Time Stack. Time and Time Again. This is a short story compilation. Hawksbill Station. And The World Inside. Next writer is Alfred Bester. I only have two of his, The Demolished Man and Starburst. Next writer is Greg Bear, Darwin's Radio, and The Forge of God. The next writer is David Brin. I read, it looks like three of his. The River of Time, Startide Rising, and The Postman. Next is Walter M. Miller Jr. I've only read one book, A Canticle for Leibowitz. Next is Harry Harrison. I've only read one of his books, Make Room, Make Room. Next is C.J. Cherry, and I'm not real sure the correct pronunciation of the last name, but this is, I have a short story collection of hers, and a book titled Down Below Station. Next is a writer I've only read one book of, Octavia E. Butler, Kindred. Then I've got two books by H.G. Wells, The World Set Free and The War of the Worlds. Next is Carol Capek. I've got two of his books, The War with the Newts and The Absolute at Large. Next is Stanislaw Lem. I've got one book by him, The Siberian. Next, Arthur C. Clarke. He's quite a well-known sci-fi writer, but I've really only read two of his books, Rendezvous with Rama, and then 3001. Next is Neil Stevenson. I've read three of his books. The first is Snow Crash. Then Anathem, huge book. And Seven Eves. Next writer I have is Larry Niven, Ringworld, another exceptionally well-known sci-fi writer, but I've only read this one book by him. Next is George Orwell, 1984, and Animal Farm. Next is Aldous Huxley, Brave New World. That's all I've read by Aldous Huxley. Another one I've only read one book from, Fritz Leiber, The Wanderer. Next writer is Ray Bradbury. I read Fahrenheit 451, The Illustrated Man, and The Martian Chronicle. Next writer is Ben Bova. I've only read one book by him, Jupiter. Then next is Victor Palavin. This is Omen Ra. Next is Arkady and Boris Strugatsky. I've only read one book, Roadside Picnic. Next writer is Roger Zelaznik. I've read a couple of his books, The Immortal and Lord of Light. Next is a writer, I've only read one of her books, but it's quite a good book. This is Emily St. John Mandel and Station 11. Next is a writer, Palo Bagagalupi. Palo Bagagalupi. Hard one to pronounce, but I've read 3 of his books. The Wind-Up Girl, The Drowned Cities, and The Water Knife. The next writer is a writer I've read 2 books by him, by E. Doc Smith, Triplanetary, and First Lensman. Next is Samuel R. Delaney for Dahlgren, and this is the only book I've read by him. Another one, just one book, Yevgeny Zamyatin. Exceptionally good book, actually. Next is Kate Wilhelm, Where Late the Sweet Birds Sing, and I've just read the one book. Another one, just one book, Philip Jose Farmer, To Your Scattered Bodies Go. Next, Neil Gaiman. I've only read 2 books, but he's quite a well-known writer. The Ocean at the End of the Lane and Trigger Warning. Next is Richard Phillips. I've read 2 of his books, Immune and The Second Ship. Next is Hugh Howey. I've only read 1 book, but it was really good, Wool. Then the next writer is actually he's an exceptionally good writer, but it's Theodore Sturgeon, and this is Selected Stories, and then Venus plus X. Then the next one is Elizabeth Moon. I've only read 1 book by her. This is Remnant Plant Population. And finally, I think this is number 50, if I counted correctly, and that's J.G. Ballard. And this is a compilation of 3 stories, The Crystal World, Crash, and Concrete Island. And finally, The Drowned World. And that's everything I have of the top 50 sci-fi writers I've read. So thank you for watching, and Hopefully I'll see you on another video. Thanks.